You talked to Rose, maybe? The investment officer, he clarified, heart beating faster. Who else knew by now? He wouldn't have willingly gotten anyone at his office, let alone his sister, involved in this painfully embarrassing situation. He'd thought he was dying. A heart attack would have been easier to explain than this. His not dying would be easier to handle if fewer people knew he was only struggling to cope with his very ordinary professional obligations. Whatever, Rose, yes. She told me you'd need a responsible person to be released to, then probably some outpatient treatment too. I said I'd take care of it. This is me taking care of it. It took Tegan a minute to process that. It wasn't as though he'd left Rose much in the way of instructions during his ambulance ride to the hospital, but only someone who didn't know Sloane well would consider her a responsible person. This will be so good for you, she told him, wrapping her hands into the slightly grubby cotton sweater he wore over his very grubby Oxford. This is a place where you can get healthy. You need to be somewhere you can relax, deal with your stress, maybe get some space to feel whatever you need to feel about Mom. Not the hospital, not your stupid little condo building that doesn't even have a fitness room. Tegan ran a hand through his hair and looked around the tent where Sloane was proposing he stay. Great purple mountains towered over golden hills. The camp was on the edge of a sparkling blue lake ringed with gray pebbles and green fir trees. There were a dozen luxurious canvas tents with their sides rolled up to admit the sweet July breeze. Each tent had a wooden patio adorned with strings of fairy lights and tasteful groupings of cream-colored pillar candles. The big fluffy beds within the tents, set with half a dozen pillows and a faux sheepskin throw, promised hours of seductive rest. But Tegan didn't need any of this. He had prescriptions and a safety plan, and as soon as this last round of benzodiazepines wore off, he had a week of missed work to catch up on. I can't take that much time off, he protested. Rose said you could, Sloane insisted. He really couldn't. His mother had left the foundation's finances in a shambles, and 2 years of drudgery spent cleaning up the books had only clarified its current dire straits. And even if it had been hubris to think he was qualified to fix that with no professional experience besides trading municipal bonds, he couldn't let everything drop now. He'd be no better than his mother. Sloane, this all looks very nice, but... His sister shoved him lightly. Did you see there's horseback riding? Sloane asked, eyes wheedling. Tegan groaned and put his hand on his forehead. Horses. He needed $10 million in new endowment commitments and a direct flight back to LaGuardia, not horses. The last horse I was on was a pony in Central Park. I was 8. Forget the horses then. There's plenty of other stuff to do. We need this, Sloane argued. Tegan began frowning over we as Sloane pushed the admissions paperwork into his hands. Setting aside the question of why there were 2 admissions packets, he humored her by opening the folders and flipping through the glossy brochures. There were pages of information on the nutritionists, physical trainers, and astrologers he might expect to encounter. There was sunrise yoga, sunset yoga, crystal-guided mindfulness, and on full moon nights, full moon yoga. There were painting classes, jewelry crafting workshops, canoeing, archery, and gourmet plant-based dinners served under the stars. Did this place even have therapy? Finally, Tegan reached the professional biography of Dr. Godert, the program director's husband. He was a clinical psychologist, which seemed like overkill. Tegan's own doctor would handle his medications, and he didn't think his other therapeutic needs were large. But when Tegan reached Dr. Godert's professional specializations, he stopped. Dr. Godert specialized in the treatment of addiction. Oh, Tegan said, feeling very confused again. This is rehab? Dislocation was becoming a familiar sensation. He'd gone to the emergency room for what he'd been certain was a heart attack. Somehow, he'd ended up in the psychiatric hospital. Somehow, he was in rural Montana with a questionnaire about his non-existent drug use and a second questionnaire about his equally non-existent skincare routine. He couldn't.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.